because ideally you want to do as little as you can get away with, right? Because all this costs money, and the more complicated my funnel is, the higher my kind of like average order value or lifetime value needs to be to justify, all the steps it takes to get a sale. So like ideally, I'd love to just go up to someone in the street and say, hey, buy my product, and not spend any money and have them buy my product. So you kind of start there, see if that works, and then like scale, accordingly. And so start with the bottom of the funnel, go to the top of the funnel, see if people convert. If they do, great. See why and double down on that.
Yeah.
Most people probably aren't converting, right? So that's why you got to go to the middle of the funnel and figure out, okay,
Correct.
now I got to get them to know, like, and trust me. Like, what are the objections? How do I build trust? How do I get testimonials? And then you flush that out, and then you have a sales funnel.
Hey everyone, welcome. Today we're talking e-commerce with Adam Trainor, who is the COO of Onfolio. Onfolio is a holding company that holds several online property businesses, and one of those brands is an e-commerce business called Vital Reaction. This one is in the health supplement niche, and Adam will tell us how he took over that brand in the beginning, assessed it with different strategies and ideas, and then took those findings and convert that into actual marketing tactics. He talks about content marketing, paid media advertising, and how to structure the funnel as a whole. If you want to get in touch with Adam or anyone, any guest of the show, please feel free to join our Facebook group. The link is below in the description. If you like this content, then also feel free to subscribe, to like it, and comment below. And now stay tuned and see you at the inside. Hey everyone, I'm very excited. Today we have a very special guest. His name is Adam. Adam has an interesting career background. He started out as an academic. He also went into entrepreneurship and started his own tutoring company. Then he transitioned into retail, first physically, then online. He was running an online e-commerce store, which we're going to talk about in a bit. And now he is the COO of Onfolio, which is an investment fund that is investing into several online business properties, which we also gonna tip on in a little bit. So first of all, Adam, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks, Marco. Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
It's very excited to have you. I think there's a lot of things we can talk about. First, I'm very curious to learn more about your e-commerce brand that you have been managed or kind of managed for a couple of years, Vital Reaction. How did you get started, and can you tell me a little bit more about Vital Reaction?
Sure, yeah. I had a bit of a circuitous path to getting to Vital Reaction. Like, as you mentioned, I've had a lot of jobs. So I guess when I was an undergrad, I was working full time when I was in college, working in brick and mortar retail, and basically I kind of like worked my way up from like a sales associate to, by the time I had graduated undergrad, I was like managing a store. It was like a high end kind of sporting goods store in the Boston area, and at the same time, I had also like tutored pretty heavily throughout school, for school, and then on my own. It was pretty lucrative, and I enjoyed doing it. And I got to a point kind of working in brick and mortar retail where I learned a ton, right? I learned like how to run a business. I learned how to manage people, which is probably the most important thing. And I learned a lot, but it was like a big kind of corporate company. And, I got to a point where I was managing this store in kind of suburbia that was super dead. And I was still kind of required to be there, 40 hours a week, even though I felt like it was just wasting my time. And I kind of did the math on how many tutoring clients I would need to quit my job and, kind of start a little company. And it turned out it wasn't that many. And so I took the leap, and I never looked back. And so I ran a tutoring company for many years. I grew that. I think it's probably about a dozen tutors, working with about 100 families in the Boston area every year. And that was a great lifestyle business. I was really happy doing that. Again, learned a lot. Through that, I got into digital marketing. That was a big part of kind of how I grew that business. First started with kind of SEO, learned some paid media, and really like every, full stack digital marketing, everything you need to know to kind of grow a business. I had to learn because it was my company. I had to grow it.
Absolutely.
Did that for several years. Really enjoyed that. And then my wife decided that she wanted to become a chiropractor. and looked into it, and it seemed like a pretty good quality of life. We thought it'd be fun to open up like a chiropractic clinic that we could run together, and that'd be kind of our future lifestyle business. Once we became married and started our future together. And so she went to chiropractic school, and I followed. Left the tutoring company, and we moved to New York and went to grad school. And I went up, picked up a doctorate in chiropractic medicine and a master of science in clinical nutrition. Really enjoyed it. I really liked school. It was super fun. But I really miss business. I also really like business. And when I left school, I actually decided, instead of opening a clinic, I had a really interesting opportunity to basically take over a supplement company. And that's where kind of Vital Reaction comes in. So Vital Reaction was an e-commerce company, and they were looking for someone that had like the weird intersection of a background in health and like digital marketing experience. And like it was a very kind of niche skill set that I happened to have, and so it was a good fit. And so I basically took over that company, and I didn't know this at the time, but at the time that I took the job, the company was in like pretty sharp decline. Basically all the sales, they'd gone from a peak of probably about $100,000 in sales a month. By the time I came in, they were doing about $20,000 in sales a month, and that's because the business was almost entirely driven by affiliates, and they basically lost a couple of big affiliate relationships and like didn't know how to recover. And the guys who had started the company, had a lot of experience in business, but really none in kind of digital marketing or online entrepreneurship. So they didn't understand. I remember I walked in, and like one of my first questions was like, "Where are your customers coming from?" And it was just like blank stares. So there was a lot of work to be done, and within the course of about a year and a half, I completely transformed the company from 100% reliant on affiliate revenue to about 80% reliant on like own marketing channels, organic SEO, email marketing, and grew it from about 20K in revenue back up to we got back up to about 80K in revenue by the time I kind of transitioned out. So it was a great experience again. Kind of further develop my skill set, kept leveling up, but yeah, really enjoyed it. Really interesting experience.
Yeah, that's amazing. Before we dive into, because I'm so curious on how you took that business that the owner didn't even know where the traffic or the customers are coming from. How did I would love to know how you analyzed it and how you transformed it. Before we do so, I would like to learn a bit more so that also the audience has a better understanding about this brand. With Vital Action, you already mentioned it is health related. Can you talk a little bit more about the product and which customers are you serving with it?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So Vital Reaction, like I said, is a supplement company. They sell their primary product is really cool actually. It's a really novel like antioxidant supplement. They're kind of like they're like Alka-Seltzer tablets. And you drop them into water and they kind of fizz up and effervesce. And the way they work is the tablets are basically pure magnesium, and it's got like a magnesium mixed with malic acid. And so when you mix magnesium and water with an acidic catalyst, you get this cool chemical reaction that fills a glass of water with like millions of nanobubbles of hydrogen gas, and you can kind of see this like white cloud fill up the glass, and then you drink that down. And it's like the best research supplement you've never heard of. Like there's literally over 1,000 peer-reviewed articles talking about. There's a lot of different benefits, but basically it's a really powerful antioxidant. And so I guess the kind of TLDR is that there's these things called free radicals, which are bad, right? Free radicals are cancer, these unstable molecules. They cause cancer. They destroy your DNA. But again, like even like really simple processes, like you like cut your finger, you know what I mean? And like you feel pain and like bleeding, the physical damage that's occurring at the site is actually being caused by free radicals. Like that's like, so it's very fundamental to most processes that happen in your body. As we get older, our ability to make to make antioxidants, which are the kind of antidote to free radicals, declines. And so as we age, basically free radicals increase, antioxidants go down. Definitely contributes to a lot of aging, kind of disease, as you mentioned, cancer, stuff like that. And so Vital Reaction sells really powerful antioxidants. So like as you age, it really helps kind of keep free radicals in check, and really has a lot of positive benefits for a ton of different processes in the body. And so we sell like these tablets that you can use to infuse water with hydrogen gas. We sell inhalation machines you can actually use to breathe hydrogen gas directly. It's pretty cool. Like when I first heard about it, I thought it was nuts. Like I thought it was like total BS. But like the more I got into it, I was shocked I'd never heard of it. Like they're researching this at Harvard Med. They're doing studies like Boston Children's Hospital. Like it's very legitimate science. But you can't patent hydrogen, so like no one's ever heard of it, right? Because there's not like a lot of big VC money interested in promoting hydrogen.
Okay. Yeah, I could definitely sense the academic speaking out of you. Yeah. No, it's definitely yeah, an amazing supplement. And yeah, now back to the question, since we got a better picture about what you're selling there. Tell me a little bit more when you took over in this brand, and the owner, he did not basically know what direction he is taking, and so forth. So how did you do your assessment, and yeah, please tell me a little bit more how you pushed off this transformation process at the beginning of this journey.
Sure. So for me, any project starts with like analytics, right? Like you have to get data to
Hmm.
understand what the heck's happening so you can diagnose,
Yep.
what the problem is. And then like you have to understand that before you even figure out what you're going to do to try and fix it. So started with getting, suite of analytics in place, like basic Google Analytics, which is really good for, I mean, especially with like GA4 and the way that Google is moving. I mean, Google Analytics is going to get you, like 90% of what you need for most people. I think what Google Analytics is not good at is really tracking like kind of like behavioral based triggers. So, you need some other like CRM or e-commerce platform that's going to give you more information about like customer kind of buying behavior, so you can then like
Hmm.
feed those to create audiences and Klaviyo, stuff like that.
Hmm.
But you basically need to figure out like what's your basic kind of analytics like dashboard. And so Google Analytics, and then I think when I came in, they were running the store on Wix, and Wix just like really doesn't give you any data.
Mm.
And so we migrated the
Okay.
store from Wix to Shopify, um, which is a much better, more robust e-commerce platform in terms of like data that you get out of it. Google Analytics installed, different, people have mixed feelings on this, but different kinds of like heat map tracking,
Mhm.
like session recordings, really just trying to get a sense of what is actually happening with the site. What do people do when they
Yep.
land on the site? How do they interact with it? If people are buying, what leads to a buying, behavior? If people are not buying, where are they dropping off? What are the friction points? Stuff like that. And then using all that analytics data to figure out, okay, where are our customers coming from? Like what channels are driving, traffic that turns into customers? And then what is our cost to acquire those customers?
Hmm.
So, where's our traffic come? How much are we paying for it? And then how much value are we extracting from those customers once we convert them? Basically, are we profitably acquiring those customers? Is what we are charging for our product and what we're making on a sale enough to justify what we're spending to convert? And then once you figure out which channels are converting profitably, really kind of like doubling down on
How
those.
how long was this process? Just the assessment alone, looking into the data, looking into heat maps, and
That's a
gathering
great
that.
question. It probably took a while. I don't remember specifically. If I get,
Okay.
and the other thing I guess that is important to understand, like when you're running a company like this, like we can talk about this a little bit more. One of the challenges that I had when I
Sure.
got into this job is that there were real constraints around budget. Right, the owner was
Mhm.
very much like tied to the revenue that the business was making, and so they weren't really reinvesting any of the profits. And so basically,
Mhm.
there was money to pay my salary, and it was expected that like I would kind of like do everything.
Mhm.
And like that's, you know, to a certain extent you can do that and you can get away with that with some businesses. But if you're trying to scale an e-commerce company, that meant like being like the Google Ads guy, being the Amazon guy, being the Shopify guy, being the SEO guy. Like you really have to wear all those hats. And so it's not like you had the luxury of sitting down and like doing data analytics for 6 weeks and really coming up with like a
Mhm.
nice plan. It's, you kind of have to do everything all at once. It's
Yeah.
like trying to change the tires while the car is moving. And so I think with any like the best time to plant a tree is 10 years ago and today, right? So like for things like data, where I want to know as much historical data as possible, what's most important is just get that tracking code up. So on
Yep.
day one, I'm sure I got all the tracking codes up, right?
Mhm.
And then you just wait for the data to accumulate, so you get enough information to make decisions. And there was plenty enough other things to do in the background while the data was accumulating.
Makes total sense, and you already mentioned it. A lot of entrepreneurs are in a very scarce environment, and what you guys have changed with Onfolio, we will also talk about that in a bit, because that gave provided quite a bit more resources. But I want to stick to this topic, what we're discussing right now. After you did the assessment and you found a direction, what were the first things that you implemented after that?
It's a good question. So I guess I'm being like, I don't want to say I'm like being dishonest, but when I say that it's important to look at like what channels are converting and then double down on those, like, yes, that's true. However, there are also certain channels that like I happen to know are going to be really important to focus on no matter what. And so I kind of broke my own rules and started there. So like when I started, the site wasn't getting any SEO traffic, right? So it's not like I was doubling down on a profitable channel, but I knew that SEO, you know, I kind of cut my teeth in SEO. That was probably my strongest skill set going in. And so, you know, I knew that the importance of SEO, and again, back to that planting a tree analogy, like SEO is a long game. And I'm a pretty big believer in content marketing, and basically every experience I've had, you know, in the world of online business has only affirmed that. And like content marketing really just means like figuring out what kind of information is going to like be interesting to your audience, right? And getting that information in front of them, right? And then figuring out how to continue to have a conversation with them such that they get to know you, like you, and trust you, get to learn about your products, you know, how it helps them achieve a desired transformation in their life, you know, and when the time is ready, they're ready to buy from you. And so really I just started pumping out a ton of content, like did a bunch of keyword research, and came up with like a very SEO driven content strategy. But again, because of kind of, I think my healthcare background, I was able to kind of like, develop a really good content strategy, basically, that did a really good job of like answering all the pain points. You know, one of the challenges in trying to sell this product, you know, you can see even in me trying to talk to you here, it's kind of complicated. There's a fair amount of science, you know, it's pretty jargony. And it's really hard to sell people, you know, a supplement that they've never heard of or something that they've never heard of, you know, and to help them understand that's something you really need. And so what I had to do was to figure out, well, what do they care about, right? And that's what I started to write about. So I started to write about SEO-driven content designed to talk about, you know, how to deal with pain and inflammation, and you know, like how to deal with headaches, like trying to find specific use cases, you know, that could lead back to the product, but finding people who had a problem. Right. So like a good SEO driven content strategy designed to speak to people that had a problem, and then created a bunch of lead magnets that kind of created a bridge between their problem and our product. And then, you know, basically used a combination of SEO and paid media to get that content in front of people. So I could cookie them, you know, retarget the lead magnets, get them onto the email list, and basically get like a sales kind of like system up and running. That was kind of like the first, I think about it in a few different like phases of the customer acquisition process. So I always like to start at the bottom of the funnel, right? So because no matter what I'm going to be doing, I'm essentially going to be spending some kind of money or investing something to try and get people onto my website. Correct, so if I'm going to spend anything to get someone on my website, even if it's SEO, I'm investing my time, I'm investing labor, or I'm paying for whatever. And so I want to make sure that that website is as like rock solid a resource as possible, and is as likely to convert customers as possible. And so that means kind of starting at the bottom of the funnel. And so that means making sure that my website is as optimized for conversions as I can have it be, you know, with the limited data I have. Making sure that all of my retargeting campaigns are in place, right? Because the vast majority of people that hit my website are going to bounce, and I want to put all this effort into, you know, attracting someone, only never talk to them again. So making sure my retargeting campaigns are in place, making sure I had a good nurture sequence in place, right? To go with those lead magnets. So you had some like email automations, so that basically I had something where that like I knew it was sticky, right? So if I sent someone to that website, I knew they were going to be trapped in my my marketing ecosystem. Like they'd either you know, get my retargeting ads, they'd end up getting emails, like that kind of omni-channel, you know, experience of my brand. And so then once I did that, then I started to think about, okay, now where are my customers, right? And so then I skip the middle of the funnel, right, and go straight to the top of the funnel and think about, okay, so now what kind of, because like that's the next thing you need to start doing is like filling your pipeline, because you need to like start just driving leads into that funnel, and it's going to take a while to get results, and so you need to like make the top of the funnel really wide, but as relevant as possible. So then you start with really targeted content like that addresses the pain points of the people that you want to attract, and then once you have people starting to come in, you start to see like, well, because ideally you want to do as little as you can get away with, right? Because all this costs money, and the more complicated my funnel is, the higher my kind of like average order value or lifetime value needs to be to justify, you know, all the steps it takes to get a sale. So like ideally, I'd love to just go up to someone in the street and say, hey, buy my product, and not spend any money and have them buy my product. So you kind of start there, see if that works, and then like scale, you know, accordingly. And so start with the bottom of the funnel, go to the top of the funnel, see if people convert. If they do, great. See why and double down on that. Most people probably aren't converting, right? So that's why you got to go to the middle of the funnel and figure out, okay, now I got to get them to know, like, and trust me, you know, like what are the objections? How do I build trust? How do I get testimonials? And then you flush that out, and then you have a sales funnel, right? And then like from there, it's a matter of like iterating and tweaking and testing. But like that, and I make that sound like pretty simple, right? It took, you know, a long time to get all those pieces in place. And I think the biggest thing to take away from that is that any of these things that we're talking about, like Google ads, like email marketing, they're all just tactics, right? And they are only as useful as their role in your larger strategy.
Absolutely.
Right?
It's like
So
an orchestra, and you have to have different instruments, but they need to play together in a certain way.
Precisely.
Yeah, Adam, that was quite some very valuable information here. And what you just explained with those, you are installing all those multiple touch points. You're making sure that the home base is secured, and then you're going out there. I also always mentioned, as I learned it, there are also 3 customer types. The first type is an instant buyer who goes maybe to your website and buys the products. But this is usually a smaller percentage of people who are instant buyers or impulsive buyers, right? And it also depends highly on the price point. If the price point is high up, then there's a super rare. But then there are also one customer psychology is that they need to see multiple touch points. So they need to see a blog post, they need to go on your email, they might need to get retargeted, and it takes certain steps. And the third type is they just need to see you for a long enough of period, so maybe a couple of weeks, until they have this trust. But with such a system that you just described, you are touching on all of those 3 different psychologies, and trying to build those relationships and nurture the email throughout email marketing and other channels. You try to nurture them, providing them value, which is great. And I want to get back, like you said, one of the first things was to produce content. You used keyword research. Then you came up with what are the pain points, how can I educate. You wrote a few articles there, and then you mentioned you had lead magnets to get them into your newsletter. So how does this work, or how did you come up with all with those different parts? You had an article, then what is this lead magnet looking like, and what would happen next? How does this journey look like? If you could elaborate on that.
Sure. Yeah. There's I think it's in the Story Brand book. The author's name is escaping me at the moment, but he has a really good kind of metaphor for marketing, where essentially marketing is, will you marry me, right? And most people say no, and so you say, well, how about a coffee, right? And you take them out for coffee, and then if they go out for coffee, ask them if they'll marry you, right? And if they say yes, great. If no, it's like, well, how about another date? And that's basically what marketing is. It's like, will you marry me? Yeah. Most people say no, so it's like you keep courting them until they're ready to convert. And one of the problems that a lot of like kind of new marketers or people that are fresh in the industry make is they run out to everyone they meet and they demand that they marry them, right? And that's their only interaction. And if you were actually trying to get married in real life and your only plan was to run up to people in the street and ask that they marry you, you'd have an incredibly low success rate. Like you might get lucky, right? Like I'm sure you would find someone. It's a big world. You might get a sale, get lucky, but your success rate is going to be insanely low. Whereas if you focus on figuring out like who is going to be interested in what you have to offer, right? What are they like? What are they interested in? How can you bridge that gap? How can you get them to know, like, and trust you? That's dating, that's marketing, that's how you make sales. And so what a lead magnet is it's taking someone out for coffee, right? So someone's going to land on your content, whether it's through, an organic visit, if you're paying to get this content in front of somebody, if it's a guest post, however they find you, they've landed on your content. 99.999% of people are going to bounce and never come back, right? And you've invested all this marketing activity to get this person, and like they're gone, and you're never going to see them again, and you just wasted all that time and money. So that means you need to figure out a way to get them to stick around. And that means you need to get them off of a channel that you're renting, right? Because if you're getting traffic from Google or Facebook, you don't own that traffic, you're just renting it. Yep. So you need to get them off a channel that you're renting and onto a channel that you own, right? And typically that's email. I've seen numbers that for email marketing, you get an ROI anywhere between, $7 to, $42 like per dollar invested. Those numbers are probably somewhat arbitrary. But the moral of the story is like, because it's an owned channel of qualified leads, email marketing is like always going to be, one of your most important ROI centers. And so one of your goals in any kind of business, whether it's e-commerce, whether it's even if it's a content site, if you're monetizing via ads, you should always be doing email capture. And one of the best ways to get people's emails with the lead magnet. So think about your own experience in your own life, right? If you're on a website reading about something, we all get inundated with offer like pop-ups, right? Yeah, we get inundated with pop-ups asking for our email. And like, especially in our world, we're pretty, like internet savvy. And so we get like pretty blind to those things. It's important to remember that most consumers, especially like, so for Vital Reaction, is targeting, an older demographic, probably 50 plus. For a lot of these people, like they're still not digital natives, right? And so things that we may think are, kind of like a waste of time, like are still very effective, right? Like pop-ups are still very effective. But anyway, so think your own behavior. You're not just going to give your email away unless it's something of like real value, unless you really want to learn something or know something. If you imagine people are listening to this, they're probably like in the Google Ads audience, right? So imagine you read some blog about Google Ads and they're like, hey, if you give me your email, I'm going to give you the exact tactic and case study I use to, get this business from $500 a month to $2,000 a month. You put your email because that's real value and you want it. So like, that's what you got to do. You got to figure out what does your audience actually like want to know about? What do they think is real value? And then like invest the effort to really create that. I think a mistake a lot of marketers make is like they want to create something that like looks like something their audience would want, right? Like just create something your audience wants. Like find out what your audience wants and really spend the time and money to like make a quality like guide, or in our case we usually use ebooks. So like one of our most successful was like so like an angle on Vital Reaction is anti-aging. Right. And so we have there's this a really popular book called The Blue Zones, which talks about kind of like the world's longest lived people. And they live in these clusters around the world they call blue zones, and they have habits in common. And so we took that idea and turned it into an ebook, right? Like, discover the habits of the world's longest lived people, right? And so if you're interested in anti-aging and you see a book that's like discover the world's habits of the world's longest lived people, based on real science and data, that's going to be really appealing to you. You're going to give your email, you're on your list. And moreover, you've indicated to us that you're interested in learning about anti-aging, right? So then I'm going to like pump you with content that's just going to like keep adding value. So you're going to get to know me, like me, and trust me, and take my recommendations when it comes time to sell.
Yeah, that's really great. Adam, do you like when you approach this lead magnet? You said you have to really understand your customer. Do you do some like what sources are you looking at?
I'm glad you asked. So this is another thing that I think a lot of digital marketers tend to skip over, and this is like real marketing, right? Like absent digital marketing, it's just real marketing, and you really got to know your customer. Really good sales is customer service. Like you really have to believe that whatever you're selling is really the best solution to whatever problem your customer has. And in order for that to be the case, you have to really understand the problem your customer has. You have to understand the language they use to describe that problem. You have to understand like what that problem is creating in their lives, like emotionally, like structurally, and how you can address both like the real world, like rational like thinking, but more importantly, like the emotional, kind of secret language that they're using to talk about this problem themselves. And more importantly, you have to effectively communicate how your product or service will affect a transformation in their lives that solves this problem. And in order to be able to do that, you have to learn a ton. So we do like customer surveys, getting on the phone with customers, like doing interviews. That was I guess one advantage when I started this company is like I was literally doing everything, and so I was on the phone with customers all day every day, right? So like I knew exactly, and I would have very long conversations with them because I would learn a lot about them, right? So I'd learn, and one of the things I learned is they like to talk about themselves, right? So it was really useful. So I got to really understand like what their problems were, how they talked about them, the language they use, and I started to put that language, in emails, in sales copy, and it definitely makes a huge difference. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, definitely taking the time, investing into that, investing into the direct customer research. That's very valuable to get. And now we talked about the funnel, how you set it up, how you created the content, lead magnets. And now when we go to we have a viable funnel here, then we want to get more customers. Let's talk a little bit more about paid advertisement. What is your mindset around around spending money to actually get sales back?
Sure. One thing I wanted to say, just thinking about everything we just talked about, I think I'm making it sound like I guess I've been doing this for a while, right? I understand this process pretty well. I'm able to talk about it pretty articulately. I screwed up a lot, man. I made a ton of mistakes, not necessarily at VR, but like over the course of my career to like learn all this. You know what I mean? You have to do a ton of trial and error. So it's not like you're ever going to get out and have this perfect experience where you execute this perfect marketing strategy and you're just going to print money, sometimes that happens, but almost never. Like you have to screw up a lot. And so I know I've listened to a ton of these podcasts where you listen to these experts that just make it sound so easy, right? And you're like, oh, you're all fired up, and you go out and you do it, and then you're sitting in front of like a blank WordPress screen, and you don't know what the hell to do. And like that's fine. Like that's real. Like I've been there, and I guess I just want to make sure people understand that like what you hear in these podcasts is like decades of experience. You know what I mean? Like it took a lot of learning to get to this point. And so if you're struggling or if you feel overwhelmed or if you're not having successes, like that's normal, right? You're doing the exact right thing.
Yeah, I appreciate you being honest. It is indeed, it's a long process and it takes a lot of sweat to get there. But that's all part of building up the experience. So when you spend paid ads on your store, you said also it is quite a different. What is your mindset when you get a customer into the door? What are you trying to accomplish there? Yeah,
that's a great question. So paying for customers, it's an arbitrage game, right? You got to figure out, can I pay to get a customer for less than I make off that customer, essentially. And so the variables you're really looking there are your real cost per acquisition. So like, what does it actually cost for you to get a customer? What is the average order value of that customer? And then what is the lifetime value of that customer, right? You need to really understand those numbers. And you really need to have a way to measure those numbers before it makes sense to spend money on paid advertising, right? Like if you are not able to measure attribution and to measure customer value, you're going to waste a lot of money. And so it's really important to be able to count those things, I think, before you start spending paid traffic. And then, in terms of like tools there, you can get really sophisticated. It kind of depends on the amount of money you're spending. The good news is if you're spending a ton of money, there are really sophisticated tools that, can help calculate these things for you, but they are expensive. So, it's really important, I think, in the early stages to understand how to calculate these things yourselves as best you can. And then as you scale up, obviously there's software that can help. So you got to figure out, what is my cost per acquisition and is my AOV high enough to justify it? That's usually where I start, right? Because AOV generally is the most important or the easiest. I guess it's the combination of like the easiest / most significant lever you can kind of affect to really change outcomes like in e-commerce. And so start looking at AOV. Is the AOV enough that we're profitable on that first acquisition? If so, great. Let's spend a ton of money on ads, right? Because you get a profitable funnel, and so scale it till it's not profitable anymore. If you're not profitable on that first acquisition, which is often the case, then there's a few things to diagnose, right? So there's the ad side where I would kick it back to Marco's agency and say, hey, Marco, can we do some work on keywords? Can we play with our bids? Can we see if we can get customers at a cheaper price, right? And then on the website side, I need to see, well, what can I do with average order value? So one of the things that I guess one of the lowest hanging fruit that most businesses don't have is just a simple like point of sale one-time offer, right? So if you can get like a point of sale one-time offer, I generally I've seen as low as 30, which is pretty high, and as high as 70% of customers, take advantage of one-time offers, and that can really drive up your average order value. And so it's really important, I guess, to be effective. The one-time offer should be too good to say no to, right? So it should be closely connected to the product they bought. It should either somehow enhance the experience or be necessary to kind of complete the experience of the product they bought. Supplements are funny. And supplements, it's generally best to just sell more supplements, or even more like the same supplement. It really depends on the vertical. But anyway, so testing some sort of like one-time offer and like test, right? Like test a couple. Like we have Undivided Reaction, we have 3-bottle upsells, we have 6-bottle upsells, we have 3-bottle downsells. And it's really important to keep testing because you don't know what's going to convert until you try it, and often your intuitions are wrong, right? So it's really important to kind of test. So can you get that AOV high enough so that you are profitable at point of sale? In which case, great. Scale the campaign, spend a ton of money, until it's not profitable anymore. The last thing to think about is the other number I mentioned, which is lifetime value. And so whether or not you can like get like the cost per acquisition and the average order value and within parameters that work, you should obviously focus on lifetime value. Lifetime value is the total value of that customer. It's basically, the total amount of money that they're going to spend with you over their life as a customer. And if you can figure out how to sell them more stuff over time, you can afford to spend more to acquire them in the front end, right? So maybe I sell you, a 60-bottle dollar of supplements on the front end, and maybe I lose money on that, right? Maybe it costs me $100 to acquire a customer. But then maybe I know, some percentage of those customers sign up for a subscription, right? And I know that the typical subscription customer stays on for X number of months. And so I know that my lifetime value suddenly goes from, that initial purchase of $60 to, I don't know, maybe $500. In which case, spending $100 to acquire a $500 customer, assuming I make the money back in time to pay for my advertising bills, makes sense, right? That's the other thing you have to think about is how long it takes you to get that lifetime value back. Because if it takes you 2 years, to make that $500, it might not make sense to spend the 100. But those are the variables I look at and think about to kind of. Those are the constraints, I guess, around advertising campaigns.
You have to look at those metrics to get really a sense of the true profitability. Otherwise, you're just running blind if you're just going for the immediate sales, which I see a lot of companies out there are still doing. Thank you.
I would argue ROAS is not a great metric. I've never cared for ROAS because ROAS is meaningless without context, right? Because if I don't know my lifetime value or my average order value or even my real cost per acquisition, I have no idea if a ROAS is profitable or not. Because it could be I need my ROAS to be 30x in order to be profitable, right? And maybe you're reporting a 20x ROAS, and that sounds great on paper, but we're still losing money,
Yeah, correct. And I think at the beginning, when we had a quick chat before this podcast, you also mentioned whoever spends the most buck will basically win, or who is able to spend the most bucks in paid advertisement will win. And you can just ensure that by strategically also looking at your product portfolio, I guess, and think strategically on your roadmap there, like what products are support each other to get this AOV and lifetime value up.
Yeah, the inverse of that is whoever can extract the most value from their customer can afford to pay the most, right? So how do you extract the most potential value?
This is a lot of knowledge, Adam. Thank you so much for sharing. Do you, in this journey, you probably had a few resources that you were tapping in, like to learn your skill set or to get inspiration from? Do you mind sharing some of them? Like, what are your main inspiration sources when it comes to marketing?
Man, I've listened to every digital marketing podcast under the sun. Wow. There's more than I can. I mean, just when I was in the early tutoring days, I spent a lot of time in the car. And so I was just driving all over the state of Massachusetts, and I basically got an education in digital marketing from podcasts. It was actually really valuable. So don't knock podcasts like this one. I like the Authority Hackers have really good podcasts still. I listen to that one. I like Ezra Firestone is a great resource. I've really enjoyed his e-commerce stuff. I really like Isaac Rudansky for Google Ads. He's it's Adventure Media, I think, is his thing. But he's got great courses on Udemy. His courses are probably the best Google Ads courses I've seen. Ryan Dice's digital marketer material is excellent. I don't even know what it's like. Back when I was using it, I think there was a product called the Digital Marketer Lab that was maybe $100 a month, and it gave you full access to all their education. That was a really good resource. Matt Diggity's got a bunch of good courses. I'd recommend all those on SEO. Yep. The Authority Hacker guys are good on SEO as well. Who else do I really like? eCommerce Juice is a good podcast. I like that one a lot. Perpetual Traffic Podcast is good. Social Media Examiner. I guess I just read I read everything. I just read everything. I think it's really important to find. There's a lot of good resources like Twitter. I'm a big fan of digital marketing Twitter, right? There's so many different Twitter verticals. I just follow a ton of people on Twitter. I find that's a good source for information curation. And then my own personal network. I'm very fortunate that I work at a company with a ton of high-level digital marketers, and so everyone's always constantly sharing articles and various Slack channels. And so I just get exposed to a lot.
Yeah, that's very important to be in the right environment as well. I just have a banner here with a website if people are interested to check it out. It's vital-reaction.com. And now I would love to really, briefly also understand a bit more about Onfolio. That's the investment fund company that Vital Direction is now a part of. We talked before. Vital Direction used to be a bootstrapped company, and then suddenly it's now part of this whole environment, and which is more on the abundant side of things, because it works with capital, with a lot of more capital. And I would be just curious also for the audience to learn a little bit more about Onfolio, what you guys do, and yeah, if you can give a brief introduction to that.
Sure. So Onfolio, so it's actually not an investment fund; it's a holding company. Important distinction. Okay. And so we are a holding company, and we acquire and operate online businesses of all different flavors. We have basically they're divided up in a few different portfolios, and we have a mix of different. We have like kind of agencies, like different digital marketing agencies, a couple of SEO agencies, e-commerce businesses, content sites, a bunch of different like digital courses, really all the kind of different like business models you can imagine existing on the internet. We kind of operate in. And so that's great. So basically, I guess the long story short is that Vital Reaction, at the time I was working for it, our mutual friend Dom, who started Onfolio, reached out to me about coming to work with him at Onfolio, and basically Onfolio decided to just acquire Vital Reaction. And so I went to work for Onfolio, and I started managing a portfolio of companies for them. And I did that for about a year and a half, and that portfolio included Vital Reaction. And then earlier this year, I was promoted to COO of all of Onfolio. That's been a really great experience as well.
Yeah, congratulations for that. And I remember when we started working together, we were working closely on Vital Reaction together, as you were still managing it. Right now, just to get a picture, how many brands are there in this holding company, and what types of businesses are there?
Sure. We have a couple dozen brands total right now. And I would say they fall into, I mean, like I said, they kind of cover all the areas of online kind of business models you can imagine. But what those turn into is basically e-commerce, different kinds of agency models, so services, digital products, so digital courses, and then content sites. So basically like SEO plays that are, monetized through affiliate offers, ads, stuff like that.
Okay, so are you currently also looking for investors still? And if someone has maybe an interesting property, can they also contact you to eventually talk about it, to sell it to
Sure. So we're not actually actively looking for investors, but we are about to IPO, which is very exciting. So we are about to IPO. We're going to be listing on the NASDAQ in the very near future. And so our stock will be available for trading. So if people are interested in investing, that will be an option in the very near future, which is very exciting.
Awesome. Yeah, I also plugged in the website here. Thank you so much, Adam. That was really great. We are at the end, basically. Is there anything else that you want to talk or to say? Where can people connect with you?
It's a great question. So I'm terrible at social media. I have like absolutely no presence. I'm a complete lurker on Twitter. But feel free to email me at adam@onfolio.com. I love connecting with people. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty findable. But I'm happy to connect with people. Love talking business, love talking shop. And we're always looking to acquire. Yeah. So if you ever have a business that you're interested in us taking a look at, definitely reach out to me. Yeah. Be happy to connect you with the right people.
Awesome, Adam. Thank you so much, and have a great day. It was good to have you on the show.